Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Your Money, Your Purpose, the podcast where we talk about finances and we switch between getting technical, talking about what to do with money and what are some options and some questions to ask your tax professional or your advisor. And then on the other episodes, we talk about your purpose and how you can align your financial decisions to live your life more fully in the way that brings you, fulfillment and purpose and really get you excited about how you're living your life and the financial decisions you're making. My co-host is Billy Zarillo, another advisor. And today we are going to talk about but it might be yours. We're going to talk about some different financial personas or personalities. Now, this all came out of some studies for behavioral finance, and Billy and I really love this kind of topic because it not only helps us understand where our clients are coming from, but also it helps them understand how they make the financial decisions and sometimes why they make decisions in the way that they do. So the question I have is, have you ever wondered why some people are natural savers while others are comfortable spending? Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, they spend all the money, it's burning a hole in their pocket. And just why people approach things differently. Well, like I said, today we're talking about financial personalities, and these really are a person's unique way of viewing and interacting with their money. So it's how they approach their relationship with money. So that's our topic for today.
Yeah, and I absolutely love this topic. One of my favorite books that's really helped me in my relationship with my wife is The 5 Love Languages, right? And that's a really good, if you've ever read that book, I want you to be thinking about that book while we're talking about these personas, because they kind of align, right? Because with these personas that we're going to be talking about, you're going to have a very specific money language attached to that, right? And we're going to get into different personas and stuff like that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And like Brian said, you might see or hear a persona, you're like, man, I really resonate with that. And so if you do really, really look at what we're going to be talking about today when it comes to these personas, and the reason why these are so important is because I made a post about this today, Brian, and before we got on here today, I told Brian about this post, and I asked a simple question: is it a lack of financial knowledge that is holding you back from your financial freedom, which is a huge problem? Financial knowledge is definitely needed. Or is it a limiting belief from your past? And your past is often connected to your personality. And so we're going to talk about really a couple of different personalities today. There's about 10 of them. We're going to talk about 5 of them today. And so we're going to share with you, what that personality is, some ways that it can hurt you, right? Because there's some, especially when we talk about the very first one, can throw a lot of people off. And we'll get to that here in a second. But, how some ways that it can hurt you, but also how you can maximize your personality to maximize your journey with money. And so it is super important when we're having conversations with our clients to talk to them about their financial persona or personality. We actually have an exam, right, or a test that you can take to actually figure this out. And then we can have conversations around your personality, around your goals, align those two things so that you can experience the financial freedom that you want to experience. I think that's super important, and it's going to be a super fun conversation today.
Yeah, and Billy, one of the things that we want to emphasize is, because the first one is it's one of my
neither
favorites.
Of us.
Yeah. but this is not a judgment. There's no shame. There's no blame. We're not judging. It's raising your awareness in your relationship with money. But if you already work with Billy or you choose to work with us, these are the things that we want to understand so we can be better advisors to you. Yes. So whether our financial personas are the same as advisor and client doesn't really matter that much, but understanding your financial persona, how you approach money, what it means to you and things like that is really important. So as we talk about these different personas, they all have their idiosyncrasies, just like Billy and I have our own personal idiosyncrasies. Some people like, some people won't like. They are just an awareness level raising of how do I approach money, and what is kind of my default? What is the natural way that I handle things? And it's been so insightful for the clients that I've used it with, Billy. They're just like, this is awesome. I never really understood that about myself. And then as an advisor, it just helps me understand where they're coming from, because, in my mind, I might be thinking, well, I would do it this way. Well, that's because of, how, my experience with money, how I was raised, what I've been taught, my knowledge level, my awareness level. And so although I might do things differently personally than somebody else, it doesn't make it right or wrong. So again, just making sure that if you hear something and you think, well, Billy and Brian don't like that type of persona, that is not the intention of this. So it's just begin to introduce you to what they mean, what they are, some blind spots you may have, and then what advantages that personality has. So Billy, I'm going to share the first one, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, actually, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm going to share the first one.
You're going to share.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, you are. I do apologize. Yep.
Well, Billy, decide. Do you want me to share it?
I'm not a direct communicator. So
I was going to say, so that's so funny, because that's exactly what it is. So the first type of financial persona is called the direct communicator, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Now, if you are a direct communicator, you're really in the minority, because the direct communicator doesn't shy away from money conversations. Like when it comes to finances, they're direct to the point, always ready to share. They're kind of an open book, which a lot of people kind of shy away from that. So if you are that kind of person, you might be a direct communicator. And I want to share, how that can hurt you. And then Billy, I want you to jump in, but I'll share this part. So, and again, when we say how it can hurt you, just understand that you might have some blind spots with how you approach conversations and how you approach decisions. So your strong approach to direct communicating can be difficult for others. I'm talking about if you're married, to feel at ease when discussing financial matters with you. So just understand that, and I don't have the percentages, Billy, but I would tend to believe that the direct communicator is a small fraction of the population. So it can lead to, because of your directness and other people's uncomfortable with directness, it can lead to like very strained conversations. It can lead to conflict, and it can just lead to, I hate to say just hurt feelings, but people might shut down because they're not as open and direct with you. And especially if you're in a relationship, that's important to know. If your partner, your spouse or partner, is not a direct communicator, and we'll talk a little bit about that sometime today. And I know we'll mention in the next one what it means when you compare, your personality to a spouse or partner. So, Billy, how does a direct communicator, how is that helpful to the person that's the direct communicator?
Yeah, I think because they have no, whenever I'm working with a direct communicator, again, I think like you said, it's definitely a small segment of the population. I would think you would see that in a lot of type A personality. Am I getting that right? Type A personality would be very direct. And where that's great with working somebody with that, like that, is that, that exactly what's on their mind, right? You know exactly how they're feeling, but that can also be a very detriment, right? And so for me, right, as a, somebody that maybe shies away from the directness, right? It's just maybe sometimes I'm not always, as my own personal story, direct communication like that may put me on the defensive, right? And now, Brian, if Brian and I are having a conversation and he's very direct and I'm not in a place to feel like to be talked like that, I'm in a defensive. Now I'm in a combative stance and nothing is going to get solved, right? We're just going to argue or I'm going to shut down. And so, the way it can help, like Brian was saying, is that being, hey, exactly what that person's thinking. There's no hidden expectations. They've laid them out for you, but also, you can kind of go in there with that scorched earth kind of feel, right? And just completely obliterate the situation. And so, so I think you just need to be careful of if you are a direct communicator, but also that if your spouse is a direct communicator, you need to be mindful of that. That's their love language, right? When it comes to their money. So I think that's important to realize.
Yeah. And one last thing, when we work with a direct communicator, it's very easy to know what's on their mind. We know what their goals are. We know what their risk tolerance is. They're pretty clear. And if it's something they haven't thought of, they usually answer right away. And a lot of times when it comes to if you're a business person and you're going into a business like deal or negotiation, and you are a direct communicator, that's important to understand, but also to recognize a direct communicator, because these are financial decisions when you're talking about business decisions, and it can be to your advantage. If you're the direct communicator, you can cut through a lot of the ambiguity when it comes to business dealings, and that is a strength for you. You just like we said, you got to be careful of just
read the room.
Read the room is a good way to put it. So let's move on to the next personality, Billy.
Yeah. So in direct contrast to what Brian was just talking about is the indirect communicator. So this is, are you an indirect communicator? So basically, you prefer to keep the peace during financial conversations. You often avoid conflict and ensuring that everyone is comfortable. You may not always express your financial opinions and clearly avoid tension. And just really quickly, where can this hurt you? So your tendency to avoid that confrontation that we were just talking about can lead to misunderstandings. I call that, it can lead to confusion. It can lead to what we call silent expectations. And that's never good, because if they're silent, no one knows what the expectation is, and that can lead to a lot of discourse. Important financial issues might go unresolved if you don't speak up, right? You might see something that's a financial issue, you want to speak about it, but maybe it's feeling you at an uneasy. But where this can help you, just like with the direct communicator, right? They can cut through that that ambiguity, the word that Brian just said. My words
ambiguity.
Yes. But your calm approach can make others feel comfortable. And that's really important, because in financial discussions, they can be emotional. And so if you're kind of the rock in the storm, that could be a really big benefit for you. And so, Brian, when I'm talking about these two different personalities now that we got the first two out of the way, what are your thoughts on the indirect communicator?
Yeah. So a lot of times that, when I'm working with an indirect communicator, I want to help them find their voice, because if I share something or I share an idea, or we're talking, and I want them to feel very comfortable disagreeing with me. And I've noticed that generally speaking, not all the time, but generally speaking, women are indirect communicators when it comes to money, because it's an uncomfortable topic for them to talk about. So it's working on drawing that out. And so that, I don't want to say that's a negative. It can't hurt you if I can't help you find your voice. But on the other hand, very, very kind of measured decision making, a little bit, I don't want to say slower, but you just consider things and you process things a little bit more, I will say, in depth, or, it takes a little bit more time. But also, when the indirect communicator, finally gets to that point where they're comfortable and they've, expressed what they want to express, that's a decision that they're extremely secure in, because of their approach to handling money. So I think it's a very good description to say just measured decision making.
Yeah, that's really interesting point, because it can be seen as, and again, we're not shaming, blaming, we're just calling it as it is, and some of the experiences that we have. But sometimes maybe the direct communicator is just thinking about the here and now, is not thinking about the future, makes a decision because that's the type of person they are. They make decisions. And then all of a sudden down the road, they're like, oh, why did I make that decision? Right? What happened? Right? And so, but on the same token, the indirect communicator could be dragging their feet, right? They can be so paralyzed with fear that they just are like, they don't want to even deal with it. And so they just say, they're just going to sweep it under the rug and hopefully it gets better. So yeah, there's some good things, but there are also some, like Brian said, not things necessarily we want to say that are going to hurt you, but those blind spots, right? Those are the things that you need to be aware of with your personality, is those blind spots.
Yeah. And something I want to mention here, Billy, is, as we go through these different personas or personalities, people may see a little bit of themselves in the different personalities. And just as you were describing, somebody that makes a decision, pretty quickly, and somebody that is a little bit more, you said, dragging their feet. I actually thought of my wife and I and how we make decisions. It's very, very different. It's not that one is good and one is bad, or one is better and one is worse. It's just we approach things differently. But I see parts of myself in my decision-making process in her, from her, and she sees, some in me. So you're going to see bits and pieces of things. And again, it is not a judgment. It is just to give a framework for a discussion on how to understand how you're approaching your finances and how we can communicate, or if your advisor who you're already using, or you want to work with us, this is something we use to understand and frame the conversation. So, Billy, is it okay if I jump into the next one?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so the next persona is Financial Optimist, and I love this one. Because it's mine. I most identify. So identify, as Billy and I went through this, we saw ourselves in a lot of the different personalities, but this is the one I most identify with. And when I took the assessment, this is the persona that the assessment
makes a lot of sense.
And the kind of the personality description of the financial optimist is being cautious. So they're cautious and realistic about finances. They're always preparing for potential setbacks, but they're constantly planning for the future. They're focused on risk management and financial stability, but always excited about looking forward. That's where the optimism comes in. There's always a silver lining on things. So where this can be a drawback if you're not careful is while planning for like those worst case scenarios, although it's helpful, it can also lead to over caution. You might miss out on financial opportunities because you're too focused on avoiding risk right now. And this is something, again, I'm just sharing personally, that part of the financial optimist really doesn't resonate deeply with me because I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years. Have owned several small businesses, have taken what some people would consider some very risky turns in my own personal professional life. So again, although I identify mostly with this, it's not that I'm exactly a canned version of the financial optimist. So Billy, as a financial optimist, what is that helpful with? If I most identify, as a financial optimist of all of these personalities, how is that beneficial to me?
Yeah, because I identify with a little bit with this personality. My personality is not actually until our next episode, which I'll make a shameless plug for, where we talk about the other 5 financial personalities. So I love a financial optimist just because even though when things seem bleak, right, they're always like, well, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. Right. And so what I love about that is the hope, right? The hope that they have for a better life for themselves. And so I think that's just important to remember, but also, that hope, that over maybe confidence, so to speak, can lead you to miss, some big things that are coming. And some things that you need to plan for. Maybe it's a down payment on a home. Maybe it's saving for a kid's education, whatever it might be. But you might be so optimistic that you forget about, real world problems, right? Your hot water heater goes out, right? Which happened to me, right? And, luckily, if you caught 2 weeks ago our episode on talking about the different types of accounts that you have to have, in order where to put your money, or having an emergency fund, having the ability to, pull from that emergency fund and not have to swipe a credit card or get a loan to get this hot water heater. So with the Optimist, it can be a double-edged sword, right? You're excited about the future. You're excited about, the here and now, and you're all over the place, but you also got to remember we need to prepare for the times that maybe are not as good.
Yeah. The other strength that I see in the Financial Optimist, and honestly, I do see this in myself, is the idea of contingency plans, or being able to figure out very quickly, okay, that didn't work out. We're going to be okay. And this is why, because I already have a plan for that, or I'm good at making a contingency plan when something does happen. So again, just another strength of the Financial Optimist. So ready for the next one?
Yeah, the Financial Pragmatist. Hopefully I said that right. I am, I'm not blessed with phonetics and stuff like that. So this is a really interesting persona. It's a direct contrast to what we were just talking about with the Optimist, right? This person really believes that, is just fearful of the world basically melting down, right? It's your typical doomsday prepper, right? It's always preparing, always thinking that the worst is coming, that something bad is going to happen to them. And where this is a strength, because I have clients that are like this, that say, I don't have enough money saved, even though you look at their bank account and you look at, one of the things that we look at is their liquid term score, and we can tell them how long, based off their cash like assets, how long they could survive. And talking to these clients are like, hey, you can survive 1 year, right? Like, you're good. But like, in their mind, that it's not enough, right? Like, what happens if this? What happens if this? So a strength is that you're at least prepared for those emergencies, right? You're always prepared for those one-off things to happen. But where this can hurt you is that a couple of different things. You're not thinking about your long-term future because you're only thinking about your short-term future, right? Those basic needs haven't been met of having a secure financial future, having a nice solid foundation. But also it can lead you to be disconnected with all the good things that are happening in your life. Maybe you have a good job. Maybe you make good income. You have a good family. Like, you're able to go on vacations with your family and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of things that are going on in your life that you should not neglect just because you're always in prepping mode. And so what our job is as advisors is to help you realize that, that yes, there are some definite blind spots, but there's some good things, but also, like, how do we alleviate some of that pressure for you so that you don't have to internalize that pressure, if that makes sense. Brian, when now that we're talking about the Optimist and the, this financial personality, what are your thoughts?
Well, and honestly, as we were learning about these, this is the one I thought I was, because I'm always focused on what's next. And I think the caution that I would say to the Financial Pragmatist is, you've got to live right now. We talk about, our podcast is Your Money, Your Purpose, and your purpose is not to worry about the future. Your purpose is to live a fulfilling life and leave a legacy of influence and impact on other people. And how you do that and in what way you do that is really up to you. But the Financial Pragmatist, I think, has a hard time realizing that, because they want to be sure that they're going to be okay financially. And a lot of times, like you said, Billy, they think, well, my emergency fund's not big enough. And we look at their emergency fund and they're good for 12 or 18 months. And they say, well, I don't know if I can retire. And when we look on it and we look at their spending, we're like, you could live to be 276 and not run out of money, and of course I'm over exaggerating there, but the caution. So the financial pragmatist usually doesn't have trouble with saving. They might need help in knowing where to save and what buckets to put into. Reference our our podcast from a couple of weeks ago. They need help with that, but saving has been pretty easy for them because they're worried about the future. And so helping them get a sense of, I'm okay and I can celebrate, I can enjoy, knowing, giving them some peace of mind. And sometimes it's just talking through that, that they'll be okay. And again, that is both, I think, the drawback and the benefit of being a financial pragmatist is prepared for the future, but you also need to live in the now. So those two things are the two things pulling a financial pragmatist.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, right? And so we've talked about four personalities so far, and it really hit. And this question comes from really the last two, but it could lean into the other two. Do you think past experiences from our childhood and our early adult life really impact what personalities we take on? Because I feel like, experiences, especially as kids, especially as young adults, lead, whether it be trauma, whether it be, maybe we had a really good financial life, and so we have more confidence, or more of a direct communicator, or maybe, our childhood was very, or our adulthood was very traumatic, and so we're like, I got to protect myself. So I guess that's my question. Does some of that past impact our personalities today?
I think absolutely. Just like anything, our environment is going to shape our attitudes and how we act and react when it comes to anything, whether it's other people, whether it's money. And so whether it was a positive experience, a negative experience, or even just, I'll call it neutral, but just what we observed from the people that were in our family on how they approached money and how they I will say leveraged money or used money, whether it was in a positive or negative way. And when I say positive, because they created great memories for their family and this and that. Negative, I mean, if a child grew up in a household with two parents and they used money as a leverage against them, where they were always fighting about money because there wasn't enough, or they disagreed on it. So all of those things absolutely are going to affect how a person approaches it. And if you're remember, Billy, what I said at the beginning, this is not about blame, shame, or judgment. It's just raising awareness. So as Billy and I have gone through some of these things on our own, and we've talked to our spouses about it, and we go through values, what our values are when it comes to our life and our money. It's those past experiences and our upbringing that really lead into that. It made me think of one other thing, Billy. I know we have one more that we want to talk about, but there was a study done about the investment choices that people make, and it's all in their formative years. I believe from the ages of 12 or 13, when a lot of people are getting allowances and they're starting to spend their own money, whether it's through allowance or a part-time job, up until their early 20s. Depending on whenever they grew up, whatever that time frame was, whatever the leading financial investment was at that point, is something they hold on to for years. And I'll give you an example. I have a client who loves CDs, and when he grew up, CDs were paying 6, 7, 8%. Well, when I met him, CDs were paying 0.01%. That's a big difference. But he still liked these things because they were safe and secure. But he still had this approach to it of when he was growing up, when he went through those formative years. So, in answer to your question, absolutely, we bring our experiences, and our experiences help form our financial personality, just like they help form our own personality. When it comes to our relationships with other people. So. Anyway, we have one more to talk about today, Billy, and it is the financial saver. So, and this is different than when we're going to talk about next time, the financial saverer. We should probably put this up in printed so people understand. So this is saver, S-A-V-E-R. And it's exactly what it means. So if you are a financial saver, if that's your personality, you're really disciplined when it comes to saving and managing money. You prioritize savings pretty much over everything else. So that's kind of a first thing that you do. Whenever money comes into your world, you're putting some into a savings for something, whether it's short-term, mid-term, long-term, but it's a priority for you. You do it habitually. It's the first thing you think of. And that's really good. It's a really good practice. So where this might be I hate to use the word, we keep saying would it hurt you, I like blind spot. I like calling it a blind spot, or just where your awareness might not be as high. You may be so focused on holding on to the money that you miss either opportunities for growth. So that's on the investment side, maybe taking a little bit of risk to get a better return, to have your money work for you more. So you might miss out on opportunities for that because you kind of have a blind spot there. But also, Billy, enjoyment. You'd rather save than enjoy your money. And you all, I know that we can point to people in our own lives, whether it's personally or professionally, where people said, I'm going to wait until I retire. I'm going to wait until something, and God forbid something tragic happens and they never get to enjoy that. So there's definitely a balance there, but a blind spot for a saver is missing opportunities on investments, but also missing enjoyment because they want to hold on to their money rather than take any sort of enjoyment in what that money might mean in experiences or what they can do for others. So you want to wrap up with some areas of blind spots?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. How
I just want to add really quickly. Yeah. I just want to add to, obviously, as an advisor, it's important to save first, right? And then work out your budget after that. And, your ability to save as a saver is a fundamental strength, right? And so it's great for you to build security. And it's a great skill to have. But like Brian was saying, when I saw opportunities for growth, the first thought that runs through my head is, yes, obviously investing that for long-term growth. But I'm thinking about investing in oneself, right? How often do we talk about one of the best investments that you can make is the one that you put in yourself? And so maybe it's an opportunity to grow professionally. Maybe it's an opportunity to grow personally, relationship wise. So it's not just the opportunity for growing your money, which is important, but it's also, maybe you're so worried about saving money that you forget about, yourself. And that's really important in the entire conversation around finances is, yourself, that what are you doing for yourself? Because I know me personally, I'm a people pleaser and I want to do as much as I can for everybody else. And sometimes I neglect myself. And so, focus on, what is good for you as well and taking some time to do that. So when I saw opportunity for growth, that's what stood out to me.
Yeah, so. I love that, Billy, because you and I have talked about this too, and how much time and, finances we've put into our own personal growth in trying to be better communicators, better advisors, better husbands, just better people. And so, I didn't even think of that when we're talking about this, but this part of our podcast is about purpose. And that's an important part of, living out your purpose, is investing in yourself so that you can live a more fulfilling life. So good for you. Good for you for that insight, sir.
Well, that's why I'm here, Brian. So talking about insight, self-reflection, I want to give everybody some actionable steps that they can take today. And I do want to mention that we do have a financial personality test, which I've talked about, only about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if you take your time. It can be, it's definitely a quiz that you can take. And Brian and I both said this to clients before, is, read the question, answer it. Don't mull over it. Answer with your gut. You're going to get the best response that way. But we also have an ebook that we forgot to mention. And that's what we've actually been reading from. and what's really great about this ebook, Brian, is that it also, it tells you about what we just went over, but it gives us some actionable steps, but it also gives us some ways to have conversations around that, especially if your spouse is that type of personality, and maybe how your spouse could talk to you about, what you need from others and what others need from you in order to feel secure in those conversations. But before we get into how you can get that from us, let's talk about some of these questions that you can reflect upon. And so, we've only went over 5. And so what, next in our next episode, we're going to be talking about the other 5. So what personality resonates with you the most, right? That's the question we want you to write down today in your book, in your journal. What resonates with me today? Right? Where can I see myself starting to, maybe I'm a little over here. Hey, maybe I'm a direct communicator and I'm like, I need to know what I need to do with that. Or, hey, see a little bit over here, see a little bit over here. I can't, don't quite see it yet, but I'm ready to learn more. But the biggest thing about this is we're just bringing awareness to the way you think about money, because ultimately the way you think and feel about money is going to be directly tied to the choices that you make around your money. So I think that's really important, is taking that reflection question today and asking yourself, which one do I resonate with the most so far? And so far today, a little bit of the direct communicator, a little bit of the, optimist so far.
Yeah. So, and one of the things, another thing that I love about the assessment that we use, Billy, if you do have a partner or a spouse, what this assessment tool can do is do a direct comparison where we can see how closely aligned you are with your partner and spouse, or how far away you are from one another when it comes to different topics when it has to do with your finances. And it is a great conversation starter. It's very, very insightful to the individual, but also to the relationship, because one of the things, and you highlighted this, that's in the ebook, is it has, what you need from others. So in that direct comparison, it actually has, this is what I need from my spouse, and this is what my spouse needs from me. And it's really, really helpful. And again, it just raises awareness. So a plug for that. So Billy, last question is, if they're interested in the ebook or taking the assessment, if they're, if somebody's listening, they're not clients of ours already, what is the best way to do those 2 things? And I'll let you wrap up.
Yeah, the best way to do that is to either email Brian and I. My email is, and we'll definitely put this in the show notes, billy@terrawealth.com, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you're brian@terrawealth.com. And just simply respond to, I'd like to take the test, or I like the ebook, and we will directly send that to you. No cost to you or anything like that. And if you'd love to have a conversation around what you think your personality is, or you take the assessment and you'd love to have a conversation around that, we would love to have that conversation with you. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget, we will be going over the next 5 personalities in our next episode. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Like I said, to give you a little bit of tidbit information, my personality, the one I scored, is in the next 5. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about me, my personality, Brian, did we go over yours today?
We did. The one that, when I took the assessment personally, the assessment put me mostly in the financial optimist personality. So that's what I am. I'm a financial optimist.
Good. Well, anyways, hopefully you enjoyed today, and we will see you on the next episode. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Have a good one, Brian.
Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and reflects the personal opinions of the hosts, not the opinions of Terra Wealth. All content shared is general in nature and should not be considered recommendations. Please consult with a qualified advisor, tax professional, or an attorney before making any financial decisions. For full disclosures, please visit terrawealth.com/disclosures.